I want to welcome everybody into the virtual speaker series as I see the numbers of participants continue to grow. I want to thank everybody for joining us here. I scream, you scream, we all scream for ice cream. You're going to hear about the Penn State Creamery from our friend Jim Brown in just a couple minutes. Go ahead in the, I think there's a chat box. Yeah, go ahead in the chat box and let us know who you are and where you're from and what your Penn State class year is. I want to welcome everybody to the virtual speaker series. We'll be getting started in just a couple minutes. We want to make sure everyone has a chance to jump on Zoom today and participate in this and probably what is going to be our sweetest virtual speaker session so far.
Very kind.
Again, welcome everybody. I see people jumping on here. Jim Wayland from the class of 97. I see Jeff Light from 1990. See Cynthia Food Science from class of 93 out there in Cincinnati, Ohio. Judy Solano down in Jacksonville, Florida, class of 70. Welcome in. If you're just joining us, we are going to be getting started in just a couple minutes. Go ahead and let us know who you are and where you are tuning in from, zooming in from, if you will, in the chat box. I see Lynn Delphus from the Annapolis chapter, 1989 HPA. Hey, Lynn. And Krista from the class of 2002 joining us. Kathy from the class of 74. Chester Springs is represented by Peggy Glazer. Alumni from Brunswick, Maine, all the way down to Houston, Texas. I see Regina and I see Janice. Welcome. So Kate Garrity from the class of 91 is joining us from Philadelphia. Welcome in. If you're just joining us, go ahead and drop who you are and your class year and where you're zooming in from in the chat box. Oh, wow, it's already starting, Jim. Tom Matta, employee of the College of Engineering, says, bring back jalapeno cream cheese. All right, if you want a certain flavor or a certain product, go ahead and drop that in the chat box as well. And I'm sure the Creamery would love to entertain suggestions. That jalapeno cream cheese sounds really good. Elizabeth Andres is craving some almond toast. We are approaching 12:03 now. And so I'm going to welcome everybody in. Thank you all for joining us on the Penn State Alumni Association's virtual speaker series. I think Mel is going to go ahead right now and share a poll with everybody. So we invite everybody, go ahead and fill out that poll that's in front of you. There are a couple questions. Again, a couple questions that we want to learn a little bit about each of you. So go ahead and fill that out, and we will be introducing Jim Brown in just a minute as we see what class year the attendees of this Zoom are. Class of 2020s. Oh, there's only one represented there. I would take the poll, but I'm on the other side of it. I'm also a member of the class of 2020, but the 2010s are well represented here, as are the 1990s. They got a great distribution across class years, across decades from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. I feel like I'm a DJ for an oldie station, Jim.
That's terrific.
All right. I think we have a couple more questions to get to here.
All questions are welcomed.
Excellent. Again, people still joining us. If you
Might
scroll
have to
down,
extend it.
okay, I'm still learning the technology here, and thank you, Mel, for that note that there is more than one question being asked, and I could see that if I scroll down here, what is your favorite Berkey Creamery flavor? And right now it's bittersweet mint out at 19%. That's a little bit of an upset because I know Death by Chocolate traditionally wins the Flavor Madness that Berkey Creamery hosts every year. I see Coffee Break. Oh, I see Other too. I need to scroll down further. Other at 23% is out in front. So with so many flavors, it's hard to pick what the top 8 might be. Alumni Swirl at 6%, Death by Chocolate at 13. But Other leads the way. My personal favorite is up there with WPSU Coffee Break. And do you prefer ice cream in a cup or a cone? Almost evenly split there, with the cone just inching forward a little bit there. And then did you know that the Berkey Creamery ships to 48 states? And a lot of people are aware of that. I'm sure you're going to touch on that a little bit. I see people continuing to join us. There's Terry Eschenauer from Atlanta, Georgia. They want the Big Brown Cow root beer float to come back. And I see Lauren Hassinger, 2010 from Milroy, joining us. All right, we are going to get started. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us. I'm Paul Clifford, CEO of the Penn State Alumni Association, and I'd like to welcome everybody to today's edition of the virtual speakers session. It is going to be, as I've said earlier, if you missed it, it's going to be our sweetest virtual speaker series of the year. Today, we welcome Jim Brown. Jim is the sales and marketing manager and assistant manager for the Penn State Berkey Creamery. Today's discussion is just the latest installment of a recurring series of virtual programming that the Alumni Association is bringing to the Penn State community. We're going to be speaking with experts, university leaders, all people who will share their insights and perspective with you in the coming weeks and months. Additionally, the Alumni Association offers networking events, a lot of career-related programs, additional webinars. You can get the full list of all of those events at our website at alumni.psu.edu/events. Now I'm happy to welcome Jim Brown, who has been with the Berkey Creamery since 2005 and in the sales and dairy industry for more than 30 years. He is responsible for the day-to-day operation of the retail, wholesale, and e-commerce entities of the creamery. Jim provides direct oversight in public and media relations, short and long-term strategic planning, product and package development, which we've worked with you on at the Alumni Association. We'll hear a little bit about that, as well as marketing and advertising, one of the strongest brands at Penn State, and that is the Creamery brand. The Creamery has been a staple at Penn State for more than 155 years and is one of the premier stops while visiting State College. If you come to Penn State, a stop at the Creamery is a given. However, during these challenging times, everyone's been facing, these challenging times that we've all been facing, the opportunities for in-person visits are limited, and the Creamery is working hard to provide a taste of Penn State pride for Nittany Lions all around the country. And before we get to Jim, I am going to share a video of what's going on at the Creamery. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, ice cream fans of all ages, please welcome James Brown.
What an introduction. Thank you so much, Paul. And thanks for everybody for giving me the opportunity to talk to you today. I appreciate your time. I hope everybody's doing great today, and I hope everybody's safe and healthy. You know, I spent a lot of time thinking about what I was going to say today in 10 or 15 minutes. And for anybody that knows me, that's really tough because I don't think I can actually talk for 10 or 15 minutes alone. I think it's going to take a heck of a lot more time to talk about the creamery. So I thought about, well, should it be fun? Should it be formal? Should it be informative? Should it be simple? Then I thought, you know, maybe I should put some plugs in for the creamery, you know, and then I thought, no, I probably shouldn't do that, or probably shouldn't tell you about how much you guys must be missing creamery ice cream, you know, because I obviously can get it every day. But then I looked at the past speakers and I thought, wow, oh my gosh, I have a lot to live up to. You know, I looked at all the doctors talking about different things and how integrated everything was, and I saw them dressed in suits. And by the way, I'm not dressed in suits. And then I thought, oh, hold on a second. I'm coming. Then I thought, well, you know, maybe I should just make it fun. What do you think about it? I mean, the creamery is all about fun, right? So I sat here and I said, well, you know, I've had a really hard time getting to the barber and getting my hair cut. So I thought maybe I'll come to the conclusion of telling you this, okay? This comes from the heart. I think I want to tell you a little bit about what I thought the creamery and the creamery workers would want you to know about the creamery. Okay, so before I begin, let me take this off. I'm just not used to hair. Okay, whew, that was too hot. Okay, so let me start again by saying thanks from all of us to all of you. We are all Penn State as far as we're concerned, and we want to make sure that the creamery products are brought to you in this time that you can't come to us. So let me start a little bit about the creamery. The creamery's been a staple, as Paul said, for 155 years. It's grown from a modest start in a barn to actually a huge iconic traditional meeting place. And it's internationally known in the dairy education business. For those of you that watched the Cal to Cone before you come on to Zoom today, we began in a barn in 1865. We were part of a blacksmith shop and a hayloft. It wasn't until 1889 that we got a state appropriation, moved into the first standalone creamery, moved in 1901 to the Patterson building, and then moved again in 1931 to Borland. The store actually was on the second floor of Borland, and in 1961, they built a first floor 1,700 square foot store. And then we were very fortunate at that time. In 2006, we moved into what I still call the new food science building, even though it's been here for almost 15 years. One of the main reasons that we moved, and I started in Borland Lab. And when I first got there back in the early 2000s, it was kind of ironic that I wanted to actually expand the business as much as possible and give the people what they wanted. So I wanted to actually expand some offerings of coffee flavors. And I was actually told that I could not plug in another coffee pot because we exceeded the electricity capacity at Borland Lab. And besides that, we had problems with water capacities, water pressure, so forth. So we had an opportunity to either remodel Borland Lab or move into a new building. We were fortunate to move into a new building. That's the food science department and the food science building. And the creamery occupies 3/4 of the first floor. Now, throughout this time, we've always been there for our customers, and that's probably what our tradition is about. But I mean, our mission is to support the teaching, research, and outreach programs of the food science department, the College of Ag, while maintaining a financially viable outlet and supporting the university community. So that's what we've been trying to do. So I hope you can understand how hard it's been for us to keep the doors closed at the store. The entire staff has been going crazy. And let me tell you something about this staff. We have 29 full-time employees. They have been working every single day to get Creamery product and bring Creamery product to you, the customer. We would be nothing without them. We also have 100 part-time student workers, 10 to 15 interns that we have every year. They can't wait to come back and can't wait to help out and join the effort. We miss them all, and we try to stay connected to them as much as possible. So let me tell you real quickly about present day. What have we been up to during these challenges? The Creamery is a premier stop in State College in Penn State. And if you come to Penn State or State College, you have to stop at the Creamery. However, many of you may or may not know that the Creamery is small, but very diverse and complex in nature. We're a full dairy manufacturing facility. We manufacture milk, ice cream, cheddar cheese, yogurt, you name it, we manufacture it in the dairy business. We have about 72 ice cream and frozen yogurt, frozen dessert flavors. And we're always looking at continually improving our product development. And most recently, grilled stickies, Thawne flavor, whiteout, monkey business. However, we haven't manufactured full-time since March. That's tough on us. We're a retail facility. Everybody knows the store. We sell products in the store, from our products to university products to community products. However, the storefront hasn't been open for quite some time. We're also a wholesaler. We sell and distribute on main campus and at the Commonwealth campuses throughout Pennsylvania. However, since the students are gone, residential dining requests has been a minimum. So with the current limitations, we've been working hard to provide Creamery products in unique ways, more than ever before, to those that are stuck at home or can't come here. The first thing that we're doing, we expanded our online e-commerce division, where we sell and ship products all over the continental United States. As Paul stated, in the last few months, we've been working really hard to find ways to get products across the country as inexpensively as possible. Our online system allows us to sell multiple and many different kinds of things online. Now, with that, we created more discounts to specific organizations through the pandemic. For instance, the Alumni Association, we've been working in partnership with them for quite a while now to expand discounts to members, to find different ways to reach out to those members that it can't be face-to-face at any given time. We've expanded and created a greatest hit pack, both in pints and half gallons, that allows it for an easier ordering process. It's an already established pack of flavors, the top 6 flavors that we have, 5 flavors that we have. And we wanted to be able to quick stop and shop and just push a button and you get it as quickly as possible. We've extended our discounts in holiday events. And we've also expanded our online gift offerings. If you don't know, you've seen it out there in social media. Thank you, Lauren Hassinger, for doing this for us. We now have a Penn State Creamery t-shirt, and it says, "All roads lead to the Creamery." It's available in blue and white, and we just wanted to make things fun. We wanted to bring a little bit of camaraderie and tradition and an iconic tradition to you at home. We've also installed e-gift cards. E-gift cards and physical cards are now available online that you can actually order and send for birthdays, whatever events you want to do. They'll be available to use online and actually to be able to use at the store. We've developed a new line of white cheddar cheese. It's conveniently called Nittany White. So we wanted to involve Penn State as a whole. And it's available in mild and medium sharp. As Paul said, we've also created additional partnerships with Penn State organizations. Our goal was to reach out to the Penn State community, all the organizations we could think about that are struggling and having struggle and trying to find ways and challenging ways to reach out to their students and faculty and staff that might not be here on campus. So how can we do that? How can we help out? We've tried to promote anniversaries. Alumni Association anniversary this year, creating the Alumni Mini, the Alumni Swirl Mini. That's a big thing that we're working on. We're also working on having some fun contests for the Alumni Association members where they can win shipments of ice cream. We're working with the Bryce Jordan Center right now. It's their 25th anniversary, and we're looking at doing a temporary naming of a flavor to complement their anniversary. The College of Engineering also has a 125th anniversary, so we're doing the same thing for them. So we want to reach out to all the partners we possibly can to assist as much as possible and to take care of the customer. Another thing besides online is we have what's called a 3-gallon vendor program. Now, 3-gallon vendors are places and businesses from all over Pennsylvania, whether it's restaurants or hotels or ice cream shops or ice cream trucks that have the ability to come in and get Penn State Creamery ice cream in 3-gallon tubs and dip ice cream in other locations across Pennsylvania. We did this mainly because we don't want to compete against any other ice cream businesses. So we set it up particularly with certain policies and procedures in place not to compete against them. For instance, the 3-gallon vendors have to come onto campus, have to pick up the product, and have to pay full retail for it. However, they've been so gracious about this, knowing that the Penn State community really wants ice cream and may not be able to come to Penn State to get it. And of course, they can't do that right now when the store's closed. So we've been very appreciative of them, and that's been a very good business for us. The last thing, and probably the most completely new thing the Creamery, and I would have never ever thought this would ever happen, was that we created Creamery same-day curbside service. Now, granted, this is completely new to us, but it's a customer-based ordering system. And basically, you can call in anytime between 8:30 and 3 o'clock Monday through Friday, and you can pick up the delivery at the parking deck. We have 5 spots, anywhere between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. Now, realize we appreciate everybody's patience in doing this. This is new to us. Because we're a small operation, we can't do it in a large capacity, but we do everything we can to answer every single phone call and fill every single slot we have throughout the day. So we just ask that if you're interested, you want to come in and get everything, if we have it, we'll get it to you, not just ice cream. So what about the future of the Creamery? Well, we struggle with that because that's a big question. When will we be reopening the store? I'll tell you this. We've been ready and willing since the day we closed. Realize that we are a full food manufacturing facility. So we've had all the food safety plans in place. We just had to fine tune them a little bit to the COVID-19, as everybody has had to. When the university gives us approval to open, and remember, it's the university gives us approval. You know, Pennsylvania is opening back up, State College is opening back up, but the university needs to give us approval. And well understood, completely well understood, because remember, if the Creamery opens, you will come. And we have to be very mindful of how many people are coming on the university at this time. It's not a fact of how we can control things inside the store. It's how everything is controlled outside the store in the public arena. When we do open, there will be limitations in the store. We'll follow specific practices based upon Pennsylvania restrictions. I know that some of the most important, we will limit customers into the store and social distancing and cleaning and sanitizing more than ever, limiting contact. But guess what? We're ready. I can say this much, we're waiting for the day for that to happen. I want to close it out by saying this. I appreciate all of you. I appreciate the employees that work here, the students that work here, and everybody that comes on campus. I just hope that we can continue that face-to-face contact in any way possible, getting Creamery ice cream and Creamery products to you. Thank you.
All right, Jim, and thank you for joining us today on the virtual speaker series. Do you have a little bit of time to stay with us and take some questions?
Absolutely. Hey, I'm here on campus. This is my office, by the way. If you see pictures back there a little bit, I'm here on campus. So, I've got all the good stuff. See, it's sitting all over my office.
Excellent. Well, hey, we got a bunch of questions. If you have questions for Jim, go ahead and drop them in the question and answer feature, the Q&A feature down on the bottom of your Zoom, or if you're on Facebook, go ahead and drop your question in the comments out there. I could see those 19 people now on Facebook Live. Jim, you are a internet sensation. We have a bunch of questions that were pre-submitted, so let's get to them. First of all, talk about how the name Berkey Creamery came about. What is the origin story?
Okay, well, the name Berkey comes from Jeannie and Earl Berkey. They owned the Berkey milk plant in Somerset. Jeannie was a 1948 graduate of Penn State in the dairy science field, and she actually met her husband Earl at his family farm. She was I believe, an intern then, and over the years, they have brought in a lot of Penn State University students to do internships there. A lot of former dairy plant operators learned everything firsthand from them. And they decided back in, I believe, 2000 to give a donation to help construct the food science building. So that's how the name Penn State Berkey Creamery came about.
All right, I'm gonna get right to the controversy. Okay, we're gonna go right to what the people want to know. And this is a similar question submitted by Paul McConaughey and also Moji Shivali. They want to know, why don't you start offering 2 or more flavors per cone? This silly rule has run its course.
Hey, children, because I said so. No, I'm just kidding. There's 2 main reasons. Come on. I thought about this a little bit because I get asked this all the time. Okay.
Right.
And I would say, because you're not President Clinton, I don't know what else to say, but there's 2 main reasons. And on a serious note, 2 reasons. Number one, safety and the ability to eliminate cross-contamination. One of the biggest things we do here that not a lot of other restaurants or ice cream companies do is that we are very heavily into allergens, and we're very sensitive to the people that have allergies. And what we want to make sure is we have students working all the time for us, scooping ice cream, and you know how busy it can get on a football weekend.
Right.
Okay. The number one thing is we do not want any cross-contamination, so we have separate scoops. We have nut scoops and allergen scoops, and we have regular scoops. We have them color-coded, and we keep all those potential allergen cross-contamination flavors separated. So I would never want somebody that has an allergy ordering a vanilla and accidentally getting it cross-contaminated by having somebody scoop 2 flavors on 1 cone and using the same scoop. The other reason is it's also time-oriented. Remember, I have 15 students at any given time scooping ice cream when there's 3,000 people that come in here, and if I'm already offering 24 flavors, if I was able to put 2 different flavors, you can imagine the different combinations that we would have, and everybody crisscross. And so I want to avoid confusion and keep everybody safe.
All right, there you have it. The rule is not going away. I think we maybe consider changing the rule when we put names on the back of football jerseys. How about that? They're just, some things are the way they are, right, Jim?
Paul, think of it this way. If you want 2 different flavors, make sure you at least bring 1 friend.
Right.
Okay. You each order a separate flavor and you share.
That works. That works for me.
Okay.
I bring children with me, and they don't finish their ice cream, and so I
So
get
you,
I get multiple samples.
yeah, well, they don't finish their ice cream, Paul, because you take it out of their hands before they're done.
Yeah. All right. So as you can imagine, a lot of our questions are revolving around where people can get creamery ice cream. I know you touched on this in your presentation.
Yes.
So two questions, well, a lot of questions, but we could probably sum it up with two, and say, one, is there a mobile ice cream option on campus, or where people could rent and have that come out to their house for a party or something like that? And then the second one is, how do you get locations in like Chester County or the Philadelphia area or out in Pittsburgh to make the commitment to have creamery ice cream?
Yeah, it's a good point. We don't um, personally sell or operate anything off campus. It is the Penn State University property that we keep everything on. The only thing that we sell is to housing and foods and residential dining. And then the Commonwealth campuses also sell our ice cream. Housing and Foods worked in partnership with us for them to distribute to the Commonwealth campuses. So if you can't get it right on campus at curbside, which we offer curbside currently, and hopefully the store opens soon and we can get back to the store, you can get it at Commonwealth campuses, and you can contact your Commonwealth campus residential dining. The majority of them not only carry it in their dining halls, but if they have small C stores, they also carry a limited amount of pints and half gallons. Now, the 3-gallon vendors, they have actually come to us over the years. We don't solicit business from them, but there's about 40 of them, and they're throughout all Pennsylvania. And if you're curious about where or how close they may be to you, please drop me a line, send me an email, call the creamery personally, and we'll look up to see exactly where the closest 3-gallon vendor is for you to be able to reach out and get a creamery ice cream cone.
Well, we know all Pennsylvanians are within 60 miles of a Penn State campus. And so if you're not close to a campus, there's maybe a location in your area. I'm going to ask someone on my team if you could drop Jim's email address into the chat box so that people can ask him some questions. Okay, so locations was one big topic. The
Okay.
other big topic, as you might imagine, is flavors. Okay, and so let's start right at the very beginning, right? How do you choose what a new flavor might be to offer at the creamery?
Wow. Well, first of all, creamery management makes that decision. So we have a team of creamery managers that we not only look at names, but also flavors and look through product development. But let me step back a little bit. Not long ago, about 4 or 5 years ago, we had about 150 flavor offerings. We're now down to 72, and there's a reason for that. As we continue to expand and grow, our logistics doesn't. We still in the same building and still have the same supply constraints. So what we've done is we've continued to grow in demand, and we've had to limit our flavors to be able to get out ice cream and store ice cream. When we had 150 flavors, remember, we'd have to keep ingredients for all that amount. So we started reducing them down based upon what was the favorites. So to get an actual new flavor of ice cream is very tough. And that's why whenever we look at doing stuff for anniversaries, we look at renaming flavors. However, it comes to us in two ways if we do have a flavor. Two different ways we could establish a flavor. Number one, somebody comes to us with a crazy name, and we establish the flavor behind it if we think it's worth doing. Number two, someone comes with a flavor, and we try to associate it, affiliate it with an actual name. That's kind of how that transpires. And of course, I think I mentioned recently grilled stickies, just made sense because
Right.
State College is popular, that whiteout, Thon, things of that nature. So Thon came to us and said, hey, listen, we'd like to have a flavor. And, we looked at it, and that's where we determined whether we can actually partner with that organization or not.
Excellent. So let's stick on the flavor topic. A question that was sent in here, Stacy O'Brien asked the question, and then actually Michael Kuttner actually answers the question. So Stacy O'Brien asks, what flavor do you think quarantine would inspire? And Michael actually has an offer to that answer. He thinks you should come out with a Mascachino cherry with vanilla ice cream, Bing cherries, and chocolate-covered pretzels. He admits that he has too much time on his hands in determining this, but any COVID or quarantine-inspired flavors that we could see on the horizon?
Okay, first of all, I want the names of those two people. They're never allowed into the creamery ever again. Okay? No, I'm just kidding. Second of all, here's the thing, and I mean this. We have been so busy, that has really been the last thing on our mind. We have been busy trying to figure ways to get as much of creamery product to everybody else instead of everybody else coming here. That's not something we wouldn't, I think like all of us, we would like to forget this down the road. We'd like to get back to some sense of normalcy down the road. But we haven't even come to the point of actually thinking about something like that right now because we've been so focused on being safe and sanitized and getting creamer product out there. But I will have to talk to those two people.
Absolutely. So
okay.
when and when you do get a chance to think about it, John Moyer actually has another suggestion. And his suggestion, and this sounds like a good one, but might be a new flavor to recognize and honor essential workers at Penn State that have folks like you and at the creamery who have worked nonstop to, keep that working.
Yes.
Maybe there's a flavor in honor of some of those folks.
Yeah, very much so. I'm very appreciative. I do know that I believe Lauren is on today. So Lauren, I hope you're taking notes. Lauren Hassner, she should be on. She's a Penn State graduate, and she's also my marketing strategic specialist. And she helps out. She's completely instrumental in handling those type of requests. So I think the biggest thing would be first is everybody that's thinking that way and has those ideas, feel free to bring it to us because we take every idea seriously and evaluate it. And we have limited staff. So if we can have the public's input, it's priceless.
So, so you do Flavor Madness every single year. Lauren's a big part of that. I've had some fun with that in the past and
Yes.
look forward to future years of that. But every year it seems like Death by Chocolate comes out as the champion. Mm-hmm. And yet that isn't consistent with your top seller at the creamery. So maybe talk through what's the flavor that you sell the most at the creamery versus why you think Death by Chocolate might continue to be the champion.
Well, Death by Chocolate wins every year because it's my favorite flavor.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But really, when you look at the flavor and popularity, Death by Chocolate is the favorite. Now realize our top flavor overall selling is vanilla because vanilla is actually used in multiple applications. But right. If you looked at just from a scooping process and an individual buying prepackaged, it is Death by Chocolate. But I will tell you this much. Bittersweet Mint has finished very closely every year and continues to. I don't know why. There must be some crazy people out there. But no. But the other thing is one of our newest ones is very popular, and that is grilled stickies. Grilled stickies have grown up the list on a continual basis. And what we rank everything, we have core flavors. We have about 11 to 12 core flavors that we make every single day and have them there. And then we have what are called favorite flavors that we make sporadically. And then we have seasonal flavors that we make during the seasons. But those core flavors, they haven't adjusted for a long time. But I will tell you this much, grilled stickies may be one of them that gets adjusted pretty soon in there.
You touched on this with that answer. But are there trends in popularity with flavors? Have there been flavors that were seasonal flavors that moved up into the favorites and vice versa? I know you talked about reducing the number from 150 something down to 70 some flavors, but how do they ebb and flow? What do the trends look like?
I thought about this for a while because over the years that I've been here, nutrition has played, that's one thing. Nutrition has played a part. I think also fads have seemed to skew the flavor choices. And most recently, it's been really weird, but most recently, it hasn't been the flavor that has driven the flavor. It's been cool names that have driven the flavor.
Right.
So with today's generation, the people that love ice cream, the cool names, as you can see already with the COVID-19 and everybody coming up with these cool names, that has seemed to drive actually creating a new flavor. So it changes from year to year. I can tell you this much, in the creamery itself, it's not just ice cream, but we've gone from skim milk to whole milk to 2% milk to chocolate milk to skim milk again. And I don't know if it's the time of the seasons, but that nutritional standpoint really changes with society.
Yeah. So there a lot of questions you mentioned on kind of the nutrition aspect of the ice cream. There's a lot of questions coming in about, for example, if I order ice cream online, how would I know which flavors are gluten-free? Others are asking, are you considering a non-dairy version of Creamery ice cream? So what do you say to both of those questions?
Well, first of all, if you go online and you look up your flavor, or any flavor, you can look underneath the flavor and it'll give you a complete nutritional facts and description of everything that flavor has in it, from the ingredients it has in it to all the nutritional facts and nutritional values. That's number one. If you can't find that or you want any other additional information, you can always email us or call us at any time. As far as the non-dairy option, for the past 3 or 4 years, we've been working on a non-dairy version, and it's been very tough. Realize that any flavor we make, we want to make sure that it's consistent with the tradition of creamery ice cream. And so we've tried different flavors outside of the realm of dairy and milk. We just haven't had the success of getting exactly what we want. A lot of times it ends up being too icy, not creamy enough. So know that we are working on a non-dairy option, and as soon as we can get our student interns back to continue our product development, we will continue with that.
Excellent. So you mentioned that you have been working nonstop since the work at home order. Have you been working nonstop to keep up with demand? And if the production isn't keeping up with demand, kind of what does the shelf life look like for creamery ice cream that's sitting in a freezer?
Well, it depends what freezer it's sitting in, because my ice cream doesn't last long enough to hit the shelf life, and I imagine yours doesn't either. Creamery ice cream has a year code on it. I'll tell you what we actually did. We did not shut down immediately when COVID hit, though a lot of operations did. I mean, realize that we are a food operation and we could have stayed open. However, based upon what the university thought was it's in the best interest to do so. So we had a big stock of ice cream because we were just going in to the graduation months. Okay, right. We were just going into the blue-white game months. All those things that we were building up our stock and our inventory for, all those events we were ready for. But that's where we are juggling things around right now. Realize that we do not have students on campus, and we depend upon students to operate the majority of our store, okay? So we've had to utilize our full-time staffing to operate all the things I talked about: online, curbside, handling 3-gallon vendor pickup, and limited manufacturing. So this is what we do. We juggle it around, and usually once a month, we try to commit a week once a month to producing and building back stock that we need to keep our ice cream going.
Excellent. You talked about names driving popularity. There's no place in the world that I would order peach flavored ice cream except in the creamery, right?
Absolutely.
Right. And it's so a couple other questions are coming in here that I want to make sure that I get to. Let's do a couple quick hitters here. These are kind of like why or why not, and do you still stock XYZ? So there used to be a flavor called Mounds flavor. What happened to that?
Okay, well, first of all, let me step back. That a really, really good flavor is Happy, Happy, Joy, Joy, which is kind of an almond joy flavor, okay? It's coconut with whole almonds. However, the Mounds flavor realistically is our coconut chip, and we still have that.
Okay.
So our coconut chip is coconut chip ice cream with chocolate flakes. Okay.
Okay. So Lynn Malkoff Massette, just next time you're in the creamery, you now know what to look for. Actually, that was not Lynn who asked that question. That was Gary Greziak who asked that question. A couple other people are looking for some clarifications. When will you make, or what happened with Keeny Beanie? I think Keeny Beanie's still around, right?
Absolutely. Still there. Still have it.
Awesome.
Still one of our top core flavors.
And I know this one because there's a connection to the Division of Development and Alumni Relations, the answer of this one. But Kelly Morganti's asking, who is the Crazy Charlie Sundae named after?
Oh my gosh. You might actually stump me on this one because I've been asked that about 4 or 5 times in the last 15 years. And I believe that was named after a person, and I can't remember exactly where it was.
Do you want me to help you?
Yes, I do. Please.
Okay. So Charles Lupton was the first vice president for development and alumni relations at Penn State. And his grandson, Doug, told me that Crazy Charlie Sundae Swirl was named after Charlie Lupton.
Really?
Yes.
That's the first time I ever heard that, and I work for the creamery. Shame on me. We're going to have to verify that.
Hey, it may not be true, but let's not let the truth ruin a good story here, okay?
Well, realize, whether the truth is true or not. I mean, think about I'll bring up a question.
All
How
right.
about the question of not being able to sell creamery ice cream off campus because it has too much and too high of butterfat content?
Is that true?
No, that is not true. It's true, but it was actually established that the falsehood of it was established by someone doing a student project, and they were just making things up. And they said, because we make our ice cream with 14.1% butterfat content, it's too high in butterfat content that it can't be sold off campus. And somehow it went from the classroom and whatever that person got in a grade to out there in society. And people ask me that all the time.
All right, here's another one. Why or why not? Why not rainbow sprinkles?
Is there any other colors out there besides blue and white?
Don't sprinkles all taste the same? Isn't it just a different color but same taste?
Absolutely. I don't care what anybody says. Absolutely. I'm not a fan of sprinkles, I'll tell you myself. And I'm actually known as, I guess, not by myself saying it, as the Rainbow Man, because I'm always kind of smiling and happy about working at the creamery and try to keep a positive attitude. But I'm not getting the rainbow sprinkles. Sorry. I just, again, bleed blue and white. That's all there is to it.
That's great. Greg Scott is asking, when will you make PS Moo ice cream? I don't know if that's a flavor. I don't know enough about all the flavors.
Ice cream.
Maybe he's suggesting a name of PS Moo.
That's a heck of a name. Well, you tell him you continue to submit that to me, and if he has any idea what kind of flavor the PS Moo would be, to let me know. Now, and realize this, the other thing that we do when we establish a flavor, we first look at what flavors are available out there. I mean, when you have 72 flavors alone, it's kind of get a unique flavor. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Back to another topic that you touched on a little bit, which was the fat content and the butter fat content.
Okay.
If that's not the secret, right? How do you get creamery ice cream tasting as good as it does?
Well, number one, fresh ingredients. Okay. Yeah. Now every manufacturer could say they have that, but I also think ice cream is creamery, or is creamier the quicker you get it frozen. Okay. So the idea is ice cream is made up of water and ingredients. If it takes you time to take that ice cream from manufacturing and filling it takes a longer time to actually get it frozen, the water and the ingredients will separate. And when they refreeze, they will not form back together and bond back together. So you have ice cream or icicles, ice crystals forming on top. So I think that's another thing. We have a very small facility, and as soon as we make the ice cream and package the ice cream, it's sent in a blast freezer at 35 below zero and frozen as quickly as possible. And I think the last thing is that on average, except for during this COVID-19, on average, it's been about 4 days from cow to cone. So we take our ingredients and we take our milk that we get from the dairy barns right here on campus, and we bring it over, and we're making ice cream that day, freezing ice cream the next day, and getting out to our customers the third or fourth day. So that's another reason our ice cream is so fresh.
Right. Now you're rotating flavors inside the creamery. Are you also rotating the flavors that are available to be shipped?
Absolutely. All of our flavors, for the most part, originally are dictated upon residential dining and housing and foods demands. So we set that up flavor list so that we know what the main campus for wholesalers need. And we use that, add a few flavors that are our staple core flavors, and then we'll put in a rotation. We always have frozen yogurt. We always try to have a sherbet, and we always have one or two seasonal flavors depending upon the time of season.
Excellent. All right. And, you know, it wouldn't be as great of ice cream if it wasn't for the wonderful cows that we have on campus. And so a question here is, do you feed the cows any special food?
Well, I will tell you this much. That's funny because first of all, the dairy barns are part of dairy science, and I'd hate to speculate exactly what the managers do over there. But in talking to them throughout the year, I do know that they have a number of different rations that they feed the cows depending upon the research project that they're being conducted. But I would push that off to the managers of the dairy science department and let Nadine handle that more so exactly specifically what they're feeding and when they're feeding them. But I knew it does change. It does change sporadically throughout the year.
Excellent. If you're interested in the cow to cone process, just take a look in the chat box. Mel has dropped in the link there so that you can take a look at what the cow to cone process actually looks like. Time for just a couple more questions that I want to touch in. And boy, there's a whole bunch that are coming in that we won't be able to get to, and I apologize to people for that. But there are people who are fans of certain flavors. Like my favorite flavor is WPSU Coffee Break. What's your flavor? What's your favorite, Jim?
Death by chocolate, absolutely.
Death by chocolate, right? But then there are some flavors where people are just fanatical about, and I can't understand that. I see Lynn has posted variegated butter flavor as one of her variegated peanut butter as one of her favorite flavors. But there's another flavor out there that I just can't wrap my mind around why it's got such a cult following, and that's tea berry ice cream. Have you ever heard of people who are just so passionate about tea berry ice cream?
Paul, where'd you grow up?
I grew up in northeastern Pennsylvania, so
then you should know tea berry.
I should.
Oh, so you knew the answer to this?
No, I didn't know the answer. So I grew up in northeastern Pennsylvania, but if I'm being 100% honest, not a big fan of the tea berry flavor.
Oh, yeah, okay. But you like the okay, never mind. I won't go into that. Well, let's step back just real quick to the fanatic. Okay? Being at the creamery as long as I've been here, I have never, and this is a pleasure of mine, this is a positive thing, I have never seen so many fanatic people about creamery ice cream, about any ice cream. It's actually tremendous. I mean, the traditional location of the creamery and the ice cream of the cream, it goes way beyond the ice cream flavor. It goes on to the creamery, it goes on to Penn State, it goes on to tradition. So I think the fanatic is more so not from a flavor standpoint or even ice cream standpoint, but actual overall creamery. Now, to get to your question about tea berry, if anybody grew up in Pennsylvania, for the most part, they should know that in my mind, it originated in Pennsylvania. And me coming from a redneck environment, if you were ever out in the mountains and the tea berries were wild and you had no problem about worrying about bears, you were picking tea berries and you were enjoying yourself. I grew up in central Pennsylvania, very close to here. And I grew up with T-Berry ice cream from Breyers. And
Okay.
they used to have Breyers ice cream shops, and you would go in there and get a scoop like, you can right now at the creamery. And they had T-Berry ice cream, and I actually became addicted to it. And now, it went from there to T-Berry gum.
Right. Right.
Okay. And then what are those little tiny pink candies? Do you remember the little tiny pink candies that were kind of chalkish? Oh, almost
Oh,
like,
sweeties or sweet
yes,
tarts.
yes.
Yes.
Not quite the small sweet tarts, but they were a little bigger, and they were probably maybe a nickel or a quarter size. That's what
Okay.
it tasted like, T-Berry ice cream. Okay. Now, some people think T-Berry ice cream tastes like Pepto-Bismol. All right.
Right. Right.
Drink it, but I want to tell you something. It's a very small following, but I would hate to upset any of these people.
Oh, I've met them. I have met them, and they are people that you want on your side. No,
Yes,
no, no doubt about it. No doubt
yes,
about
don't be standing in front of them in line when there's only 2 half-gallons of T-Berry ice cream. Because I don't care if they're 952 years old, they will run over you to get it.
That is wonderful. Hey, special thank you to Monica Davis and Lori Gray. Necco Wafers, I think, was the candy that you might have been looking for.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Absolutely. Jim, you are absolutely correct, though. When you talk about people being fanatical about the creamery, there are a lot of ice cream places around the country that are nice places to go. There's only one that I've ever been to that's an actual destination, and that's Penn State's Berkey Creamery. And we're so grateful that you've joined us today to spread the good news of the creamery and share a behind-the-scenes look of everything that makes it so special.
Thank you so very much. And I know I can say this from all the staff at the creamery. We very much appreciate everybody out there, and we're there for you. And we'll do anything that we can to help out.
Excellent. That's all the time we have. I hope you enjoyed our talk with Jim Brown from the Penn State Creamery. I want to thank you all for tuning in today. As a reminder, we'll be hosting additional speaker sessions in the coming weeks and months. Get all the information about those upcoming events at alumni.psu.edu. Thank you to everyone for joining us and for all you do for the university, for the glory, and for the future. We are
Penn State. Stay safe and healthy.
all right.